Hello, my name's Andy Needham. I'm a senior freelance motion designer based in London, UK. I've been working in the industry for over 20 years, and with some major brands like Apple, Google, Pepsi, Amazon. I'm also a digital artist, and I love to use that sort of personal project side to learn new techniques and things like that, stuff that you can't necessarily do while you're on a job, but then you can take those techniques, put them into your production. So I'm also an established trainer, over 9 years of creating courses, mainly on LinkedIn Learning. That's where you'll find a lot of my work. And some of these other companies here I've had the pleasure of working with, some of the best in the industry. But if you have Maxon One, then you have Cineversity, which is such a fantastic resource as well. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you showing up on day one of NAB at the Maxon booth. And I'm going to show my current reel, and then we'll get into the presentation. So. Okay, it's quite a lot to get through. I've got a couple of client projects to talk through and some personal artwork, and then there's another thing that I'm focusing on, which is learning ZBrush. So without further ado, let's get into the first one, which is Modify. Modify is a browser-based, AI-powered, non-destructive design tool. There's a lot of AI tools around now. The basic premise for this is to use a text-based prompt to generate an image using AI, and then from that you would develop it further with the regular kind of image editing tools, like transformations, and modifying it with additional, just stacking these additional modifiers on top. So they needed a promo, and let me show you that, and then I'll talk a bit more about the project. Thank you. This project came to my friend Dexter George's studio, and in turn he brought me on to help out on developing some materials that we use throughout the spot, and also the diffusion surface, which was featured heavily. So there's quite a few things that we can get into here. It had a particular look. You may see that there's like a sort of cap on the top, which we didn't want that to be deformed. It had to stay sort of regular shape. And so I'm going to jump into Cinema 4D and just talk about the initial problem with this setup. So we have just some regular geometry, kind of a spline extruded. And if you put that into a cloner, and we're cloning in object mode onto just a plane, so the rig would need to be flexible. We could put it onto any kind of geometry. If you start to scale this up with a shader effector, we're actually going to deform our geometry, right? So problem, we need to solve that. So the thought is, let's start with a spline, because we could potentially scale up the middle part of this, or the spline, and clone onto the top point. So let's see how that goes. I've got my spline and end side, which I've just set to 2, giving us essentially a straight line. You could probably use a segment spline as well. That would get the job done. But using this setup, I'm cloning in object mode onto my plane. And now we get a whole load of splines. Just going to connect those, so Cinema 4D now sees that as one object. And then with our cap geometry, which is right down here, if we put this into a cloner now, and set that to object mode. I'm going to put on render instances because there's going to be quite a lot of these generated. We just drop in our connect. And if I do that more accurately, there we go. We're going to get a whole load of these caps here. So all I need to do is just adjust my properties and just change the alignment. And now we're having the cap cloned onto the top of the spline, which works great. Once we put, now we can use effectors on our cloner with the splines. So put in our shader effector, and we're getting this nice looking result. So how do we fill in the rest of it? Simple, just to take an instance of all these cloned splines. So we'll grab that, and the instance is right here. And I'm going to drop this into this sweep setup that I have. I'm taking essentially the same shape, the same rectangular shape, and once I apply that to a sweep, I think I need to put this the other way around because I've got a profile and a thing like that. So the order of operations is important, but now you see that we have exactly the look we wanted, and we can also animate this and it updates really quickly. We can change the geometry up, but I also wanted to think about, and this is just after the fact, something I've been thinking about, like how could we do this with like capsules or something like that, right? And it gets you most of the way there. But yeah, let's just see, because capsules, we can find those in the asset browser. If you come over to nodes, we're mainly going to be focusing on geometry selections and geometry modifiers. Super powerful stuff, right? We can keep all procedural. So I'm going to just close this down. And the first one we're going to do is we're making selections. So we want to kind of define a region, to act upon. And when you're working with this, it seems kind of not intuitive in a way because you can't see your selection like you would if you're making a polygon selection in the viewport. So my trick is just to store the selection initially, which gives me, if I name this selection, I'll get a tag, and then I can apply that tag to a material. So now I have a visual of my selection. Now I want to select this middle loop as well. And the problem with select facing, if we're set up in this axis mode, is it's looking for an angle threshold, and we've gone beyond that point now. So we just use a grow selection capsule to just set that to one step. And now we've got our cap. So we've defined that. And then with that still stored, because we're just following the order down, we can then put that into a transform element and scale this, move this up, right? So, this kind of works nicely. We can do this. We can then put that into our cloner. And the thing is, I found when I was using my shader effector, it would kind of do it on both sides, something I'm still trying to fix. But the trick, I guess, is to just move it down underneath a floor. And then when you apply your shader, you get a pretty similar looking result. So this can play through quite nicely as well, super fast with capsules. And let's just have a look at changing the surface as well. So I can drop in a disk, and we get a completely different look. It'd be really cool, like a visualization of some kind. But yeah, just another thought, really, just trying to sort of take something and abstract it and take it in a different direction. So yeah, I'm going to move on. And here's a few bits that, were R&D renders and things like that. And then we can start to animate it and stuff. And it was a fun one to work on. And just to refresh your memory, let's just check out the promo one more time. All right, Fabric is next. Right, so Fabric provides the entertainment industry with solutions to organize their data. I know this guy knows what I'm talking about. The company needed to create a new website, and we needed a whole load of imagery that could be used across press releases, other branding, and the website and such, which would feature their products, Fabric Studio and Fabric Origin. And so a part of this was to develop like a kind of organic surface, which is here. And these were just static, which could be used. So these could be generated relatively quickly. But then I had to think about how to animate these and bring them in, and how to do it in a kind of organic way as well. So I thought of using particles to do this, and then I wanted to bring in the grid surface as well to follow along the particles in the wake. And then the other thing was actually, how is this going to work when a user scrolls the website so that the animation happens on scroll and things like that? So there's a few factors to consider. But yeah, let's dive into how we look at this. And we're going to be talking about a little bit of X particles, but a lot of the power comes from vertex maps and things like that. So I'm going to go into C4D and we'll take a look at this. So I've got this all baked down. We're not going to go through this step by step. It's quite heavy, but for the benefit of the demo, we've got this nice and nicely baked. And the system's very simple. We're basically emitting onto a subdivision surface. So we've got a lot of vertices here. And we're setting a particle for each vertex. So from there, the key thing is to set up your constraints so that the particles are kind of connected at birth and we have collisions enabled. So by using some data mapping on the modifiers, they're going to scale up and they're going to do that over a sort of certain amount of distance. And when they scale up, we're actually activating a push apart modifier as well, which creates like all these other connections and collisions, and this chain reaction happens. So it was a really kind of straightforward thing to put together, I guess. But it all gets kicked off by the geometry that we have in C4D colliding with the surface initially. So once we've got that set up, I could apply some Redshift tags, and we get, if we fire up the render view, we can see the particles are coming along. But what about that grid? How's that going to come in? So I thought, well, we're going to use vertex maps and things like that. And you can actually, when you have X particles installed, you actually have a X particles fall off field, which if we want to, we can find that in a second. But once that's part of the setup, you just treat it as a regular field and build upon it. If I enable this and just sort of hop over one frame, it should just kick in. All right, this is actually feeding a vertex map, which I have up here. So here it is in the fields, and I'll show you. You can find them basically in the field objects. You'll get a new list of objects, and all I'm doing is kind of inverting that and then remapping the data with a curve. And this gives us the result, right? How are they being rendered? They're being rendered with Redshift at render time, I guess. So the viewport stays fairly snappy, I guess. We've got one matrix for spheres, which are being distributed on the vertex, and another one for cylinders, which are being distributed on the edge. So effectively, we're recreating the classic atom array, which is right here, but we're just doing it in a more kind of optimized way, I think. So let's just dive into, so this worked out lovely, and it was a great looking result, but I'm going to just talk about a purely kind of Cinema 4D way of doing this, no plugins. So let's just start off. We've got our geometry, we've got our dynamics tags. They're going to fall down. They're going to start to feed data into a vertex map. And actually, before we go any further, if you don't know what a vertex map is, and I'm going to just quickly talk about that. So I've got a plane. I'm going to just give it enough segments so we have enough sort of detail for our vertex map. That's kind of important. So the humble vertex map has really grown up. It's available on the primitive objects as well. So we can apply this to our primitive object. All we need to do is maybe drop in a field. I'm going to change the spherical field to a much smaller size. And I'm going to then add a, let's add a freeze. And what we can do is set the mode to grow. And it's going to be based on the radius and the effect strength, but we'll press play and see what happens. Okay, so this grows across the surface, and then we can break this up with a random field. We'll set that to overlay, and we should get a more organic pattern. All right, so that's the basics of all of this setup. So with that said, I'm going to switch back to the project that we have here, and you can see there it is in my attributes manager, pretty much the exact setup that I've gone through. Once we have this data on a vertex map, we can take it and put it into another vertex map. And this is how I got the leading edge. So let me just fire up Redshift, and we can see what we've got here. So in our render view, right, so we're about, let's just play through a little bit. And yeah, right, so about here, whatever. So we can see, essentially, we've got spheres and cylinders being mapped on, but we want that leading edge with the particles dancing around. And so I can enable my thing here, right? So what we're doing with this vertex map, and if I come out of, let me come out of this view so we can see a bit clearer. So what we're doing is we're taking our initial one, and then we're using curves to just change the data, and then to give us the edge, and then we're just sort of making a bit more, the values a bit stronger, so we can get this edge. And you know, it's a lovely little setup here, which just runs super powerful, super fast. This is all being fed into a random. This vertex map edge field is being fed into the random effector, and this gives us the dancing particles that I was looking for. So if I just press play on the render view, you can see the result. It's pretty much similar, and all within Cinema 4D. So super nice. The next part of this is a whole load of product renders. So the product being a software application on screens and things like that. So I had over 160 static to do and about 5 animations. So the key to managing all this is takes and tokens. And I also used the ACES workflow within Cinema 4D to Redshift to After Effects. Yeah, I'd like to talk about that now. So let's just jump back into C4D. I have some of these. I'm not sure why the materials aren't coming through, but maybe we can... maybe I've pressed something. Okay, we're back. All right. Well, we'll go with the render view. That should just give us a look. Yeah. In here we have a whole load of takes, and so what we have is animations, but also we've got setups where you see everything change. Setups where it's light. Setups where we've got like a dark mode as well. And within takes, we can change the lighting, store different lighting. We can, change so many parameters. It's basically like having a mini version of the scene inside the take. And the other thing, advantage of, I guess, takes as well, is we can name them with tokens, name your renders with tokens. So I have all my, this approach was basically setting up one camera and having all my different screens, which are all here. And I would just swap those out for each take using my overrides. And then come in and name the file accordingly using a token. So I actually named this one after the render setting, because this was kind of named after my camera. My cameras are named something different over here. So I wanted to kind of use a different token for that. And then it's also using the take. So yeah, that worked out quite nicely because to get these out. But there's another approach, of course, there is. Let's see this view. And this is to use child take. So in this instance, I've got all my cameras within this file, and I'm just basically using a child take just to swap out the camera per material. And so once I've got that done, I can just name my take after my camera and the after the camera and the take. If I just look in the render settings here, it's set up like that, just using these tokens. How do you find a token? Well, if you know them, you can type them in manually, or you can click down here, and here's a whole list of tokens that you can add. So you can combine all of these, create unique usernames. You basically set it and forget it once you're done. So super powerful, I think. And let's move on to the ACES workflow. We're looking at this actually in RAW. When I was designing, I'm looking at the SDR view transform. So this is what I'm expecting to see when I take this into another stage. So what I wanted to do, I think from my reading around it, I set this to RAW. It's basically a two-step process to get to this stage, because normally when you open a scene, it's set to basic. You switch over to OpenColor.io, come down here and just convert the scene, and generally you get the result that you're looking for. So if you're starting this way, it's a nice, it works out quite nicely. So I've got all my renders done, and then I'm in After Effects, and I need to set up After Effects to continue this workflow. When you start up, you're going to be Adobe Color Managed, So you want to switch over to OpenColor IO, but it's going to give you an ACES 1.2 configuration. And from my reading around the subject, you want to probably stay with the same OpenColor IO color config throughout, just so you're getting expected results. So I can set this over to custom, grab the one that ships with Redshift, and it's named config.ocio, and open that, and then set up my working space and the display color space. And these are exactly what I've got in Cinema 4D mirrored here in After Effects. So this all works out quite nicely. You've got all your little, the transforms here. But what happens if the other thing to watch out for is just interpreting the footage correctly. What happens if it's interpreted in the wrong way? If we're here, you can see if I interpret the footage, this is not right, not what I want. And so, yeah, I would have a real hard time compositing this. So make sure everything's set up correctly. And then when you come to render out, let's just set this to render, and we'll put it over here. Let's just chuck it up here for now. All right, so you can see, it doesn't matter, I guess, what we're rendering to at the moment. But by the way, everything coming in is EXRs as well into After Effects. So we've got all the range of colors. But whatever you do, you want to, even if you're doing a deliverable like this, you would want to make sure that you're not rendering with the working color space, right? And it's not in the list, the one I've been working with. So maybe check on Show All, and it's the one right here at the bottom. And this will give me my expected results when I render out of After Effects. So otherwise, we'd end up with something that maybe looks too bright, as opposed to what we've been looking at in the viewers there, and everything works kind of end to end really nicely. So yeah, that was Fabric. Let's just move on to a project that this was a personal art piece, and it's called What Lies Within. Initially, I created all the smoke sim with Turbulence FD, the trees with Forester, and I did the rendering in Octane X. And I just thought it'd be quite fun to. I'll show you the result first, and then it's very quick. It turned out quite nicely, I think. I thought it was just going to be quite fun to use Pyro and Redshift, and also the new thicken generator, just to have a play around and reimagine this scene. So I'm going to jump into Cinema 4D, and we will take a look at this. Right, let's close down the render view. So what we have is our scene here, and I first want to talk about the thicken generator. This can be found right here. So with thicken, if we just have a look at these edges that we've got here, we can let's just toggle that on off. You can see how we can add that geometry here, and also one of the great things about this is we can control like the rounding with our subdivisions, and we can also, one thing that I think is super powerful is generate these polygon selections, which then allows us to have a different material on the inside, different material on the outside, and a different material on our edge here as well. So I was making sure to take advantage of that when I was texturing this. But yeah, that's a quick setup of the thicken, right? Now we're going to dive into the Pyro, and I wanted to emit from just these sections here. So I also made sure to take my polygon selection. I've actually made some vertex maps from this. So I only want to sort of emit from the area where it's yellow. So let's begin with grabbing a tag. We're going to go into simulation, and we'll add a Pyro emitter. And if we just press play, immediately we're going to get this result in the viewport. We're getting fire, we're getting smoke. I'm going to change the setup here, and because I've been playing around with this scene, I actually must have deleted my output object. Not to worry, press Control or Command D, go into your project settings in simulation. We can find the Pyro section here, and we'll just create an output object, right? This mirrors what we've got in our simulation settings, right? So in our Pyro scene, in the Pyro tab, I just want to change the way that Pyro is displayed in the viewport. And I'm going to change this from shaded to density because I want to focus on the smoke. But this looks pretty dark now. One of the really cool things in this version of Cinema 4D is we can actually illuminate the smoke in the viewport. So if I just enable my lights, we can now illuminate that. We can have colored lights. We can do all kinds of creative things here. And let's just play through and just see what we've got here. All right, so the smoke's rising up quite a lot. We've also got a camera in the scene. And if we come out of this camera now, you can see that a lot of this smoke is just, we don't need to actually calculate that. So we can cut that off with a destructor force. So you can find the destructor force here, simulate forces destructor, and it's just in my null object here. So once I enable this, I have a checkbox here that says invert for pyro. So everything on the outside of this, the bounds that I've made here, is going to be cut off from the simulation. And as soon as I press play, now we're only calculating, you see the bounds just jump to that, we're going to be working in a more sort of efficient way already. So I can dive into my camera and just see, yep, everything looks good. I don't need to change anything with the destructor. Let me just hide that for now. And we'll start to play with the smoke sim. So back on the tag, this is generating a lot of smoke because our surface thickness is pretty high up. And if you notice, like that emitter that I had set, it's quite thin, quite narrow, right? So I'm going to drop this down to 1, and this will give me a lot less to deal with. The other thing I want to do is actually turn off density and turn on fuel, which is down here. And this is going to give me like huge plumes of smoke, but I want that. I want to shape this in that way. So I can, but this is too much fuel going in. So I'm going to drop this down to 4 and then just have 1 per second. And because I've got that vertex map set up, I can actually use that inside the fuel map here. So I'll drag that in like so. And this is going to give me something cool, right? Now, don't worry about all the smoke coming through the geometry. We're going to figure that out a bit later on with colliders. But I've already solved an issue here at the bottom as well, just with that vertex map. It's not coming out of the bottom anymore, which is great. Yeah, this is starting to get there. I think we can come back in now to our pyro output here and just see what we can do here to sculpt this a bit better. So a lot of the settings when you're working with pyro are tied to gravity. And I want this to linger around the bottom here and not rise up so much. So I need to change my gravity settings. So I'm going to just put in -200. I'm going to come in to the pyro tab here and adjust the voxel size and then as soon as I do this, you're going to sort of see like the detail come in. That's a bit too much detail for me, right? I can smooth this out. Coming to my smoothing, and I'll use some velocity smoothing. And this will give me definitely closer to the look I'm getting here. And this is kind of what I want. These really big sort of thick curls of smoke. So let's handle the collisions now, because I think we're there almost. Actually, before we do that, why don't we just copy this tag onto the other side, and we'll be sure to come into the vertex map and swap that over. And then we could also adjust the random seed of the noise, so we're getting a slightly different pattern, and then we'll just play through. So yeah, we're looking kind of good there. That's all working nicely. I'm going to select these objects here. I'll come over to my tags, simulation tags, and add a collider, which is right here. And now I want to actually select all of these parent subdivision surfaces as well. And to do that, I'm just going to search. I'm going to type in sub whatever, and it will filter those out. I'm going to select these. And then I'm going to just press Shift-C. Yep. Control. Yeah, it's not. Okay. Maybe my commander isn't working, but I've got a button right here which you can add. I think the shortcut's gone away. No worries. I'll see if I can just type collider and get the collider tag. Yeah, I've got it right here. So I'll add that tag to the objects and just set that to both. And now that's everything set up, I think. We should be good to go. So these are all added automatically. We don't have to do this, but these are like all added automatically to the elements in our pyro simulation. So once that's done, of course, there's more calculations going on. So it's going to take a little second to think about it. But once it is done, we should see the smoke kind of really collecting around the geometry, really hugging it, and then it will start to rise up and escape out. So I think, yeah, for now, I think I've got to the point of what I was trying to make here, which we can certainly do this with Pyro, and you can tweak simulations all day long. I don't have all day, unfortunately, but I'm going to just jump over to the other rabbit hole that you can dive down, which is the volume material. So we have a Pyro volume here, and also another thing to note is, let's just switch back. How do we actually get this out of the viewport into rendering and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, if we're in standard renderer, we can't actually render Pyro in standard. You want to use a renderer like Redshift that can handle volumes. So the output tab, of course you could cache it, but you want to make sure you have something set to on export. So all the grids that you want to get out, you set these up here. And then you can either cache it or you can come over to your export settings here. You can export a volume. You want to probably set up the output range if it's on an animation like so. And then you can bring that in back in Cinema 4D with an RS volume. Set the animation up here by detecting the frames. And if you can't see it in the viewport, you want to make sure that the preview's set to points, and then you can adjust your maximum points to display. I've also got the velocity grid because I found that when in conjunction with motion blur, if I increase this, I'm going to get like a more smooth looking result. So that's just something to note as well. So I'm going to fire up Redshift and we'll have a look at the material that's been made. So yeah, we can be quite artistic with this. It doesn't have to be just gray smoke. If we jump in, let me just have a look here. We're looking at the density grid, one of the grids that we output, and that's in our scatter section here. And by adjusting the scatter coefficient, you can kind of adjust the brightness of this, but in conjunction with the absorption, if these values are set to the same, we kind of get like a really thick looking fog, which is really thick looking smoke, which is what I was after. There are a whole load of settings that you can tweak here just to design the look of the smoke. And just by changing like the tinting, we can get a different look as well. So these are a lot of fun to play with, for sure. The next thing, I think that's it for Pyro. We're going to jump into the trees, because initially I did those with Forester, but I found that I could just grab a tree, come in here, from the content browser. So let me just search for cherry tree, I think I used. Yeah, one of these. Let me make it nice and big so we can see. So I just grabbed this, put it into my scene, adjusted the materials for a Redshift, and then I was like, well, I want to make it move, of course. So I'm going to use cloth to do that. So I set up the branch, the tree part here, with a vertex map and a linear. Let me just hide the leaves for now. Let's just see what's going on. So we've got the linear field here to sort of make the trunk stay still. And then I've got soft body simulation on this, just doing a little bit of movement. And I can restrict, the forces by using the include list here. So I've got one for the tree and one for the leaves. And then I'm using like a whole load of connectors to connect the leaf geometry right here. And with the leaves are just simple cloth. And again, they have their own turbulence field just to make them move around. We get this lovely kind of movement happening, which we can art direct as well. This is a real heavy file, but I thought, well, I'll just bake this down. You can bake this out to Alembic and then, make a copy, and you could then even retime this if you wanted to. So we've got our Alembic trees, which can then go into the scene and give us our final looking result. So, I'm going to just jump over to... Let's just see what they look like. Yeah, I had a bit of fun. I created a couple of versions. This was just a fun little experiment. I'm going to talk about ZBrush next. Something I'm learning, something that's a lot of fun. If you're more comfortable working in Cinema 4D, you can certainly build your elements there and then use GoZ to send them to ZBrush for a little bit of touch-up, send them back, do some other rendering and stuff like that. So this all started by having like a subject that I thought I could manage, right? Because the whole topic for me, a whole new interface to learn, it's a bit daunting, right? And I just thought, I'll make some funny little cakes. This is something that came out of a book that my daughters have. They like this book so much. I was just like, well, why can't I just these look really fun. These look kind of approachable. And let me just take one of these and do something with it, and then I can show them, and they can maybe think it's cool or whatever, So, but yeah, I getting a lot out of this. So let's just dive in and see what we can do. If you have a subject like this that's so simple, you get to touch so many parts of the interface and learn the workflow. So let's just see how we get on. I'm going to try and model a cupcake, and I'm going to start with a cylinder. So I've got this cylinder here. I'm going to get into my edit mode. I can initialize this. This is kind of familiar for me, like coming from Cinema 4D with the attributes manager. So I could just adjust this and adjust my H divide. We'll drop this right down. that's looking kind of good to go. I'm going to make this a polymesh 3D so I can start to work with it. And let's just turn on the polyframe. So the first thing I'm going to do is start using a mask, right? So I'm going to hold down Control and mask out this top section, come into the move and hold down Alt. And this drops my mask down to this bottom bit here. And now I can start to kind of taper this out. So I'm already starting to form the bottom of the case. And then I will come into my drawer, come out of the mask. And now I want to make these sort of thin bits, right? So I need some symmetry, some radial symmetry. I come into the transform, activate symmetry. And I want radial symmetry, and I'm going to drop it down to, set it up to 32. So as soon as I come over to here, you can now see that I'm sort of going to be affecting this in this way. So if I hold down Control and do another mask, I'm effectively masking out every other point there. If I just slide this over to the side, you'll get a better view. So I'll press W, and with this, I can now sort of hold down Alt and Shift, put that in the mix, and I'm already making this shape, which is kind of complex. So we're getting there with just a few clicks. And next thing I'm going to do is take the top off. So I can do that with a selection. I don't need symmetry on anymore. So I'm going to press Control and Shift to get my rectangular selection. I'll select this area here. And then I want to keep those Control and Shift held down. I'll just tap this to invert the selection. And then I can come over to Geometry, in Modify Topology, delete Hidden. All right? And then we'll come over and just change this up so we can just see what's going on. And we're pretty much there. I just want to add a bit of detail to this. So to do that, I'm going to use the Z Modeler brush. So B to bring up my brushes, Z, and then M. And then I will, this is such a powerful brush, so powerful, right? I'm hovering over an edge, and I can insert an edge loop, right? I'll do that, and then I'll do another one right here. And then maybe if I can catch it just right. See, that's the other thing. Oh, there you go. Oh, I got it. You can reveal all kinds of functionality by hovering over a polygon edge or point and pressing spacebar. And if that's catching me out, I can just say do nothing. Don't do anything, right? And then I'll get my edge, and I can just put one right at the top here. So maybe I want to change the functionality of the edge. I can press spacebar again, bevel this. I can complete edge loop complete, and maybe grab that edge and just bevel that in. And now we have the makings of our cupcake case. So next thing I'm going to do is base my cake on this. So I'm going to rename this to case. I can duplicate the geometry and then rename it to cake. And then I'm going to, what do I do? I'm going to change the poly groups just so it looks different. So I just press Control W for that. And I'm going to press Control and Shift. Let me just, right, I'm only interested in this portion. So you remember what we did. We went into geometry. We found our modified topology and hit delete hidden. So now all I'm dealing with is this section here. So we're still in the Z Modeler brush, so powerful, right? But before I do this, I'm going to just scale this down a little bit. And you can see it's actually in the same space. So I'm going to move it up just slightly, come back to my draw mode, and I'm in Z Modeler, but I don't have a function for my face yet. So I'm going to say to QMesh, I want to QMesh maybe polygroup all, and we'll just start to bring this up. Looks like I need to give myself a little bit more room. A whole new navigation system to get used to as well. No worries. Let me just bring this up. So I'll bring that up, and that should be okay. Let's see. Yeah, looking all right. And then I will add in an edge loop. So I'll insert just a single edge loop, and I'm going to drop that right about, if I can grab my edge. Let me just see what's going on. Right about there. Yeah, something like that. And then I'm going to mask out this section. So I'll mask this out and change the poly group. You just press Control W. Now we can use our poly group all with QMesh to bring this out. Hold down Shift, and this will kind of bring it out here. Kind of getting somewhere, trying to form this cup. I'm going to press spacebar and maybe just bevel these in. So we'll bevel those in. All right, hit the wrong edge, no worries. And once I've got a value set up, I could actually just tap it, and that will just retain the value. So something like so. We may end up with a mushroom rather than a cake, but at the end of the day, I'm still learning here. All right. So with that done, I'm going to just turn that all into one poly group and maybe dynamesh this. So we'll do that for now. And let's just add a bit of detail to this. So let's come down here to our surface. I will come into the noise settings and we can just scale up this noise. It's not looking too bad in the preview, not too bad. I'll apply this. This is like virtual noise at the moment, so I'll just apply it to the mesh. And not too bad, not too bad. Thinking maybe the case is a bit big, but not to worry. And what am I thinking? Maybe I can just polish this a bit just to smooth it out. And of course, let's just come back out. And maybe if we wanted to, we could smooth this. We could do some other bits to it. But for now, I'm going to kind of say that's decent enough. So we'll just leave it like that. And then the next part of this is to bring it into Cinema 4D. So I'm going to make a new scene. And I will go back to ZBrush. And we want to use the Go Z. So if we look in our subtool, both of these are visible. So I'll just select all the visibles and send them over. Comes into Cinema 4D, nice and quick. Love it. We've got our case. We can now start to work on this in our familiar home. I'm here. I'm back in Cinema 4D. And I can add maybe some thicken to this. Drop this right down to maybe 1. And maybe subdivide once again. So I'm just changing this up. I'm getting my case. Again, the cupcake could be like maybe scaled up a little bit. You can go back and forth between Cinema 4D and ZBrush and just simply back and forth, right? So we've got the cupcake kind of thing. Let's group this. And we'll copy this and we'll put it into our Redshift scene that we've got here. I'm going to paste this in, just bring it up here. And we're missing an element, right? Some icing. This is something that I did. It looks a bit dodgy at the moment, right? But this is something I did in Cinema 4D. I took a helix spline and I swept it and put it in a volume builder just to kind of make it the right sort of mesh shape all gelled together. And I can just bring this down, get this into place, bring it down a little bit more. And look, it's sitting on top, but I want to do some more to this. So I can send this to ZBrush, right? I'm going to come out of this mode and let's just maybe, I don't know if I need to make a new document, but I'm going to. And I don't know. So I'm going to just send this over to ZBrush. So I can use the extensions in Cinema 4D, go ZBrush, and export. And it's there. There it is. We've got our icing. So into edit mode. Right, so now we can maybe sort out this little thing here. We could come into our geometry, maybe just smooth that right out. And I can maybe get a mask. Make my draw size a lot bigger, press S, scale this up, hold down Control, and just, I could just use Control, do that. Or I could paint in a mask, like so. And then I can just use my move brush. I could start to move this in, just hide it, trying to hide it really. Get rid of the mask, smooth this off. And also, if we dynamesh this, which we are, we can smooth it in and just sort of hide that. We've lost a lot of detail, no worries, maybe use a different brush. Damien's standard, we can start to cut in some of that detail, cut it back in. And then, grab another brush, move topology, and just kind of have a bit of fun with it, And I don't really have all day to kind of to do this. I wish I did. I love it. It gives me it's like art therapy. Yeah. So I'm just gonna call it a day on this for now. But yeah, I would just go around and get this to where I'm happy. Once we're done with that, we can just say send it right back to Cinema 4D. It comes back in place. I can hide the icing that was here before. And I'm going to just swap the materials out. So I have a cake. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, swap these out. Got my case, swap that out. The icing is there. And there we go, right? If we fire up Redshift, press play, we're looking good. We got a cake. We made it. From there, we could just jump into a more developed scene maybe. Add some sprinkles, just using like some some additional tools, and RS Matrix stuff we've looked at already. And there you go. I'm finding this a lot of fun. So yeah, I just think it's a great way of learning a new tool. Just find a subject that you're comfortable with and that you can stick at. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you all coming here, and thank you to everyone watching online.